First, a story, if I may, a journey that I'm sure many of you have been on in your past, a journey across IT over the last 20 or plus years. Like myself, people of a certain age, you'll be familiar with organizational barriers to workflow, barriers to getting business decisions performed effectively and in real time. These islands of IT assets, they often represented a business unit like finance or manufacturing, sales and marketing, and they required a dedicated team of people to feed and water and own and maintain these applications. Each of these siloed apps, they spoke their own language, their own workflow, if you like, and chances were the API was hard to use, if at all present. The IT industry reacted to these silos, these challenges, with solutions that connected them together, like the green lines, so to speak, on this slide. Data and information was synchronized and consolidated by solutions like meta directories, message queues, enterprise service buses, and many open source solutions. And why? Well, they all drove to share and transform information between business functions. A company was effectively many different companies within itself, and they all needed to share information. They needed to get work done. Looking back over history, one of my favorite love-hate workflow solutions of the time back in the 90s was Lotus Notes. It was, and why is it relevant? Well, it was stunningly successful, much like ServiceNow today. Many of us of a working age will look back with fondness of hurling this big software stack around with us at the time. But what was great about Notes was the ease of information sharing, right? As well as being able to build other applications. So it's got some similarities with the application platform as a service solutions like ServiceNow today, in that it had a very rich database of information. It had a consistent look and feel, a consistent security model, and workflow that brought people together. These workflow solutions have been empowering business. They've been going from strength to strength since then. And not surprisingly, workflow has also been core to digital identity systems over the last 20 years or so. And these systems, this workflow technology has been getting progressively easier to use. There once was a time when you had to be a programmer in order to configure workflow. And unfortunately, many solutions out there, many identity products are still like this. They need dedicated technicians to basically churn out configuration and churn out code. It's hardly low code and definitely not no code. These terms, low code and no code, are what ServiceNow use to describe their modern flow workflow types called Flow Designer. And this is all about reuse and flexibility, the ability to build individual workflows and easily test and easily share the workflow with other business units. So when folks think about ServiceNow, they immediately knee-jerk on ITSM or IT service management. And we heard Christopher in his excellent content talk about ITSM. And that's understandable, as it's often the first touch point many of us have with ServiceNow. I need to request something. I need to open a ticket because I've got a problem. I go to ServiceNow. For those that have peeked behind the curtain of ServiceNow, there's a whole range of industry award-winning applications delivered on this platform with all the benefits that brings. One such example is vendor risk compliance, governance, and risk. And these applications bring a whole spectrum of different workflows to the ServiceNow platform. My own experience of identity and then learning and getting familiar with ServiceNow, I fell in this camp of, ServiceNow is ITSM. But in my conversations with customers, it's clear that one of the key value adds of introducing identity workflow into this scenario of ServiceNow is information sharing and governance, risk compliance, and vendor risk management. These workflows are all enhanced by the notion of having identity. Additionally, we've got security incident response, threat intelligence. Now, consider yourself a risk operator. You're working a security ticket. Wouldn't it be great if the affected user, the person that you're investigating, you didn't have to swivel chair round to another application, another workflow, and re-authenticate, find that person, and compare notes on two different screens? Having identity information directly within the security incident response or threat intelligence workflows brings a whole different dimension to becoming secure and staying compliant. Finally, we've got other applications, other workflows on the platform, such as human resource service delivery, customer service management, and software and hardware asset management. And those of you with an identity background, I'm sure all these terms are familiar. And if you think back to the first slide with all the silos and the islands, integrating these solutions in the past was possible, but it was work. And it's all about agility and time to market in today's day and age, which is why identity brings so much more to ServiceNow than just the traditional identity use cases. I hope it's becoming clear that those old islands of business capability, the on-prem SAPs and the on-prem identity products, which are coincidentally calling themselves platforms now, the PeopleSofts, the old databases, the DB2s of old, they're gradually being replaced by this now platform, which delivers all these applications as a service. It's elastic, it's scalable, and it's extensible. These platforms are all about sharing. It's all about having a unified data plane, shared workflow, and a shared common experience. Those are the factors that we see are behind the success of this platform, whether it's GRC, security incidents, or HR. So let's move on to talk about identity and how identity has reacted to the growth of this platform. On the left-hand side, you see a typical stack of an identity governance product. On the right-hand side, we can see from the previous slides, the ServiceNow environment. So what has happened? How has the identity market reacted to the growth and the popularity of ServiceNow? Well, I mentioned the knee-jerk reaction of ITSM and the access request workflow, which is just one of many workflows that are relevant to this conversation. And the identity market is typically gone ahead and created a integration of sorts, right? It's like a bit like a tick on the back of a dog, right? The typical use case of access request and being able to maintain catalog items within the ServiceNow portal. So what has happened is many identity vendors have published an application to the store, which goes some way to solving this challenge. It's a step in the right direction, but as hopefully you'll come on to see, it's just one of a number of digital workflows. It's not the be all and the end all of the story, okay? So can we not see how this model, it kind of fractures the workflow and the business process. It's not end to end, and it's certainly not low code, no code. So one of the key messages here is to avoid duplication. And you, Martin, you and Christopher were talking about that in the previous segment. Duplication of effort, spending additional time and additional cost to get to what is importantly the same destination. And as we can see here, even with an identity request app being native to the platform, there's still an unhealthy duplication of effort. Everything in red on both sides is basically duplicated. The workflow, auditing, reporting, dashboards, and connectors, integration. We can't have an identity conversation without talking about connectors. So some time ago, identity vendors were all scored. In fact, many still are on the number of connectors that they have out of the box. Well, in today's modern workflow platform, many integration options are provided by the platform itself. So it's becoming clear that to people like me, identity guys, we're no longer here just to solve that integration challenge. The platform provides so much capability almost out of the box. But let's move back to the overview of the ServiceNow platform and what many consider to be a different, if not better, way to IGA by having the native identity capability adjacent and playing a role like a family member around the family table with all the other workflows that are going on the platform. And here we have in the blue the classic identity use cases like lifecycle management, joiner, mover, leaver, the access requests we mentioned from an ITSM perspective, the access reviews, making sure people have just the right amount of access and nothing more. And importantly, the audit, the intelligence, and most recently, machine learning and AI. And guess what? The platform has machine learning and AI too. So those identity vendors that have chosen to position their technology on the platform, they're in a unique scenario to take full advantage of the capabilities the platform has to offer without having to reinvent the wheel. Okay. So customers, a real world example, customers have told us, when a security incident or a threat is discovered, that making accurate, timely decisions is essential to their security operations. Being able to respond swiftly to security incidents with workflow running on the platform that can pull all these different elements together. The information has to be up to date. We can't wait for the next reconciliation or the next API to import information to the CMDB or whatever workflow is running on the platform. And with identity being native to the platform, those business security decisions, those workflows can be supplemented by real-time identity information without any delay. And likewise, identity workflow benefits from the platform itself. Take, for example, the identity use case of recertification or attesting somebody's access. Wouldn't it be better and safer to see not only the entitlement associations from the identity perspective, but also the level of risk they expose the business by interrogating the ServiceNow CMDB, the GRC IRM risk register, to look at the security incident response audit trail, and to pull all of this information together to provide a holistic view of that person within that workflow. So these are all use cases that allow team play between formerly siloed parts of an organization, and they all leverage the pre-existing ServiceNow workflow investment. So I'm going to hand over in a moment to my colleague Attila, who's going to talk in detail about some of the advantages of a particular use case of workflow on the platform. But I'd just like to spend a few moments looking at this particular slide. And there is more to ServiceNow than these 5 blue circles on this screen, of course, but these are the areas where we are finding our conversations with our customers and partners are taking us, whether it's an IT workflow, whether it's a security incident response workflow, like I mentioned previously, vendor risk management. And in fact, there are solutions out there in the security identity space that specifically focus on vendor risk management. And you don't need it, because if you're committed to the platform, it's all possible with workflow that runs natively. And then there's GRC, being able to provide evidence in real time from an identity workflow directly to the GRC risk indicators. This is one of the key value add messages that our customers are telling us. But let's focus on HR. And with that, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Attila. Are you there, Attila?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Paul. So as Paul has mentioned, there are many use cases where identity can enrich existing workflows, but the one we want to highlight is HR, and want to go a bit more into detail into this one. Just in the interest of time, we'll focus on this one use case for now. So what I like to say here is that this identity lifecycle use case, so joiner, mover, leaver, as some would call it, is typically seen as an HR use case. However, if you look behind the scenes, you actually need multiple parts of the company to collaborate to get the right outcomes. So you don't just need HR to do their work and, you know, kick off interviews, background checks, mandatory training, and so on. You also need identity to make sure that you give the right access, so birthright provisioning. You need finance to set up payroll. You need facilities to issue a badge. You need IT to issue a laptop. At the end of the day, business is a team sport, and you need all these teams. And the beauty of ServiceNow is that it is possible to have pre-built applications on the platform that allow all of these teams to collaborate in one place without any customization and without the need to integrate them. And last but not least, we have already talked quite a bit about how this all benefits the enterprise, but we also need to talk about the end user, the employee of the enterprise. They have a job to do. And in order to let them do this job, you want to enable them to be efficient. And all of these employees in their private time, they'll be using social media and e-commerce sites. And my example that I like talking about is Amazon. If I go into Amazon, it doesn't matter where I am in the world, you know, whether I'm sitting here in the UK or in Germany or in the United States. It doesn't matter if I'm on a phone or on a computer. I can order whatever I want, beginning to end, on one portal. And then I can follow that order on that same exact portal. And it tells me exactly what I need to do in order to get what I want. And I think enterprise IT is obviously many years behind, but this is where companies should strive to get in order to enable their employees to do their job.
That's a great point, Attila, and the HR use case will be familiar to many of us, like myself, from an identity background. And when you think back of what was required previously to integrate an identity workflow with an onboarding workflow, you had to deploy connectors. You had to create service accounts and go through clearance and all sorts of hoops and challenges to get that integration set up. But this particular use case, Attila, that you've mentioned here, there is no connector, right? There's no service account. It's a workflow, and it's about reuse. It's about not duplicating the information across different systems. It's just time consuming, and you don't need to do it. Now, not everybody is going to be using HR on ServiceNow, although from our information, it's one of the fastest growing applications in popularity on the platform. And of course, you know, if they've got Workday or SuccessFactors, you're going to have an integration to those systems. And thankfully, that's where the platform helps us out again, because it's kind of a built-in integration hub spoke that can pull in that information, and off you go again. You're on your journey with the workflow. So yeah, thanks for the insights there, Attila. Coming to the end of this section now, just want to summarize again the 5 key areas that myself and my colleagues and partners that we're seeing adding additional value from both an identity side and a ServiceNow workflow side is the sharing of information in a timely, efficient manner, and not remastering, not reauthoring information, not synchronizing that information across different silos. So Martin, this is the last slide, 3 bullet points to consider. You know, business is a team sport. You know, you play on the same pitch. You don't have football games running on different pitches. You know, why would you have workflows running in different corners of the business, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud? You've got to have effective collaboration, sharing of information, and reuse of that information to authorized users within the enterprise. We spoke about duplication of effort. Today's businesses need to be agile. There's a rapidly changing environment that we all work in today. You need to have effective time to market, and it's got to be cost effective too, which is don't pay for something you already have. If you have ServiceNow, and granted not everybody will, and if you're using ServiceNow for more than just ITSM, and I say that with much respect to ITSM, then identity workflows on the platform, it makes complete sense. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak from myself and Attila, and we look forward to any questions and feedback you may have. Back to you, Martin.